and welcome to Chapter 8B of Our Mother's Sore Expectation, a novel by Kehinde Adeola Ayeni, MD. I'm just so happy that you tuned into my channel. Welcome to OlusolaLive. I hope you'll subscribe and read the first chapters 1 to 8A that I've already read. Today we're going to continue from page 193, halfway down in the middle of the book. And here we go. So my husband and I took our cars to line up for petrol. We were in line for 2 days. 2 days. We would take turns to go to the bathroom or go home and see to the children and get food. At the end of the second day, it was finally our turn. It would have been our turn earlier on, but people who felt that they were too important had been coming and cutting in line, and we couldn't protest. A lot of them were big shot police officers and army officers, the same people who are responsible for our plight. 4 cars before my husband's car, this corporal came and cut in line. My husband became enraged and went up to the man, explained to him that he couldn't do that and that we had been in line for 2 days. Before you could blink, he whacked my husband across his face with a bat. People gasped in shock. My husband couldn't speak. The corporal now proceeded to beat him up. He didn't even give him a chance to defend himself. I ran between the two of them to try to stop the fight, and that was when he picked me up and threw me across the road. I landed on top of a car and broke my arm here. She pulled up her buba sleeve to show Teju the scars. By the time I regained consciousness and dragged myself back to where my husband was, the beating was over. So I can't tell you the details of the fight. My husband was prostrated, unconscious on the road. Nobody ran to his defense. There were hundreds of people there, our people, Yoruba people who speak the same tongue as us, and nobody helped us. What about the petrol we had been trying to buy for the past 2 days? At this point, my car had disappeared. Stolen. I never saw my car again, Mama Ireti. My husband's car was still there, but where we had been number 4 and 5 in line to the pump, we were now like number 20. So I begged some people to help me lift my husband into his car, since my left arm was broken. I drove my unconscious husband to the hospital. I was in pain, but I didn't even feel it, all the time praying that the little petrol that we had left in the car would not run out. At the hospital, Adeoyo General Hospital, which the government said was for us, the doctor was nowhere to be found. The nurses said that I had to pay $100 before they will even allow me take him out of the car. I begged them and told them that they needed money too. What do you think we feed on? They asked me. Air? I said, but this is a government hospital and you have to treat my husband by law. And they said, okay, go and report us to President Rahim or the impotent Vice President Adewale the bastard that we refuse to treat your husband. Before you get to Lagos, madam, your husband will be dead. So you had better pay us now. I didn't have the money on me, so I ran back home with my unconscious husband in the car, borrowed money from my neighbors and friends who joined me, and we took him back to Adeoyo Hospital. We paid the nurses, and they stood there in front of us and divided the money up amongst themselves. Each person pocketed her share. Then they asked us to bring my husband into the emergency room. This was like 4 hours after the corporal had beaten him. They took one look at him and gave us the address and directions to the private clinic of one of the doctors on duty. He was supposed to be on duty at Adeoyo Hospital, but he was in his private clinic. Did we have a choice? No. The alternative would have been to watch my husband die, so we took him into the car again and drove to the doctor's clinic. His assistants wouldn't let us see him until we paid $1,000 up front. What did we do? What would you do, Mama Ireti? My relatives didn't even argue. They ran back home and begged and borrowed the money and came back. The doctor took the money from us and examined my husband. He shook his head sadly and said that he would wake up from the coma, but he would be paralyzed for the rest of his life. Apparently, an ambulance should have moved him from the site of the beating. In that way, his neck would have been stabilized. But that all the moving and driving and juggling him around on our bad roads, full of potholes, had broken his spine. I stared at him and said to myself, ambulance? What ambulance? My husband remained in the doctor's clinic for a month. I am in the debt to the tune of $50,000. I didn't even know that that amount of money existed in my life. My husband was a school teacher, and his salary in 1 year was just $6,000. He is at home now, paralyzed from the neck down. He doesn't speak. He has bed sores, and we are waiting for him to die. He is just 44 years old. I have to come back to the market to sell so we can pay back the good people who lent us money and so my children can eat. That is my story, Mama Ireti. That is what the government of Rahim and that Okobo Adewale do to us citizens of this country, since you asked me. She concluded her story and went back to her shop. Teju was appalled. The stories were not news to her, but the details on the human faces to them wrenched her on the insides. After hearing the two women in Gbagi Market in Ibadan, she decided she had heard enough for the day and that before she continued to speak with the women, she would ask her brothers Ayo and Taiwo to join her. Taiwo, the first of the twins, was working as a reporter for the Nation's Conscience newspaper in Lagos at the time, and he had just released his first book, My Father the Hyena and My Mother the Pig. People loved the book. The title and the languages of the book soon entered the everyday vocabulary of the people in the different languages spoken in the country and in the unofficial lingua franca, Pidgin English. It became common to hear people everywhere in every kind of conversation, from friendly banter with associates to guilty pleas in the courtrooms, and even as explanations for mysterious illnesses afflicting them, to say, how else would things have turned out for me? After all, my father is a hyena and my mother is a pig. Summarily, in the book, there was this beautiful kingdom with many wonderful treasures. There was food in abundance. Every day the sun shone brightly. The rain came when it was wanted and did not disturb the citizens when they did not want it. The citizens were full of joy. They gave their children in marriages and in time welcomed their newborn babies with fanfare. There were cures for all the illnesses that came to these citizens. Old people died happily when it came to the time for them to die, and it was always before younger people. They rotated their rulers, and the citizens of this kingdom would work very hard with their ruler to make things go smoothly. They respected one another, looked out for each other, and in fair ways policed one another. It came to the time that it was the turn of the couple, hyena and the pig, to be the rulers. But some of the people did not think that they should be the rulers. Hyena needed a lot of help and assistance managing his life, and his neighbors had always helped them out. When Hyena was born, an unfortunate thing happened. The midwife who was to deliver him of his mother was late in arriving for the delivery because she suddenly developed diarrhea. The assistant midwife had gone to visit her daughter in a neighboring kingdom, so because of this, the hyena dropped out from under his mother and hit his head on the rock. He was thus brain damaged. His reasoning was faulted, and he could not make logical decisions for himself. His mother, before her death, had been taking good care of him. She had been protecting him from himself and had protected the citizens of the kingdom from his irrationality. But the tragedy was that the hyena did not know that he was brain damaged. He thought he was as cool as the next person. He wanted to do what everyone else was doing and could do, but that was not the case with him. His mother had always told him that he was different from other people indeed, because he was a hyena with special needs. Hyena somehow managed to marry the pig. This baffled some people in the kingdom as to how he was able to swing this. But the bulk of the citizens were not surprised. The pig did not care for much anyway. All she was concerned about was giving way to her sensuous needs, rolling in dirt and swamp all day, and the more dirt she could get, the happier she became. She could not come out of her selfish indulgence to see that the hyena who was courting her was brain damaged and needed special attention, and that she did not have the means to give him the special attention that he needed all of his life, which his devoted mother had provided for him. So they married. The pig would leave home each day to look for a swamp to roll in all day long, and the hyena would be left alone to his irrationality. He would throw temper tantrums without provocation because the part of his brain that should have helped him control his temper was damaged. He would assault people when he thought they were looking at him when they were not doing so. He would drink too much palm wine to help him control his feelings, which always got too much, as part of his brain to help him with this was missing. Soon they started to have children. They had 10 girls and then they had 20 boys. The children did not like to go to the swamp as much as their mother loved to do. They would go with her occasionally, but came back home leaving her behind in the swamp, and she would continue to roll around in delight. The hyena would hunt occasionally, but the problem was that since he did not have good control of his impulses, the prey always escaped. He could not keep quiet enough, and in his excitement, the prey would see or hear him coming. The problem started for this household one day when the hyena was hungry. He had not been able to catch any prey. The children were hungry too, and the pig was away rolling in the swamp. So the hyena ate the baby boy. The pig came back and did not even notice that her baby had disappeared. The oldest daughter looked very much like the pig, and on another day that the pig was away in the swamp, the hyena started to miss her, and mistaking his daughter for his wife, since he was brain damaged, he tried to make love to her. She refused and reminded him that she was his daughter and he her father, and he would not hear of it. He could not take for a no for an answer, since he was brain damaged, so he raped his daughter. Mother Pig came back, and her daughter tried to tell her what had happened, but she did not pay her any attention. She was busy thinking of the next swamp she would visit. And so things continued for this family. The hyena continued to rape his daughters and eat his sons. The neighbors were aghast at what was going on in this home, and they tried to put a stop to the abomination. But the hyena attacked them too. He threatened the others that he would eat their sons as well. And so, as the time for the hyena and the pig to become the rulers drew near, some of the citizens were very concerned and voiced their objections. The pig defended her husband. She said that no such craziness happened in her home, that they had just 10 boys and 10 girls. She told the people, and not 20 boys and 10 girls. All her children were alive and well. Her husband did not eat any of them and did not rape any of them. The hyena continued to threaten people, and he started to bribe them with some of his children, who now became slaves in these other people's homes. And so these other people did not have to do so much work. So they stopped criticizing the hyena and actually started to campaign for him to become the ruler. Some people continued to protest, but they were no match for the people who supported the hyena and the pig. Eventually, they became the rulers. The pig was so happy that she was now the wife of the ruler. She would be gone for days to visit other kingdoms' swamps. Soon, she knew which kingdoms in the world had the best swamps, and she would ask the hyena to buy these swamps so that she could keep enjoying herself in them. In between these swamps, she would also have babies whom she would leave at home and go away. Soon her daughters started to have babies for their father, the brain-damaged hyena and the leader of the kingdom. Very soon, there were many babies in the palace. The hyena continued to eat the babies and sleep with his daughters. He would bribe, threaten, kill, or imprison the people who complained or criticized him. This kingdom was full of good law-abiding citizens who began to fall apart as many people who were not brain damaged started to behave like their brain damaged leader, and the spirit of the rest of the people was killed. Very soon, the people who cared for one another and helped one another before did not care anymore. They started to hurt one another too. Mothers started to go away from their children, and fathers started to eat and rape their children. The rain decided it would stop falling on this kingdom because the people were not nice to it anymore. Now they complained all the time that it brought water to them. The rain said that it had even tried to fall only at night while these people were in bed, but they complained that its noise kept them awake. The sun too became angry and stopped shining on them. It said that the people did not smile anymore to welcome him. Their babies were disappearing in large number, and fewer children left in the kingdom did not play and run around and giggle anymore when it shone. Soon there was nothing to eat and people started to die. The brain-damaged hyena ate all his sons and his daughters' sons and his daughters and his daughters, and he started to eat his neighbors' children, and chaos started to reign in the kingdom. Very soon, everybody was attempting to eat each other. They would attack one another, and the once beautiful kingdom was in ruins. One day, the leopard gave birth to a son. But because of all that was happening in this kingdom, she did not want anyone to eat her son. She would not even let any of her neighbors come close to her son because that was what they would do. They would tell people that they would watch their children for them and eat them, and then tell the people that they did not know what happened to their children. She did not go away from her son like a lot of the other mothers. She spent a lot of time with him, teaching him their history and about when conditions were good before the hyena and the pig became the rulers. The son was a very good leopard, and he listened to everything that his mother taught him. Very soon, he grew up to be a strong leopard. One day, the hyena saw the young leopard and wanted to eat him. He just pounced on him. The leopard did not care that he was their ruler. He fought back and killed the hyena. Some people saw this and said that the leopard was bad and that he had to be killed for killing their ruler. The leopard talked to the people. He told them that he did them a favor. He explained that normal people do not eat their children or have sex with their children, and that normal mothers do not go away from their children. Rather, they stay and take good care of them. He told them that he would now be the ruler and bring law and order, as well as the rains and the sun, back to their kingdom. A lot of people did not like him and his ways, but the very few people who did said that they would work with him. So the few people started to work with the leopard, and they worked very hard indeed. They made it a crime to eat anyone, and also a crime to have sex with children or to steal one another's property, and the laws were enforced. A lot of bad people who broke these important laws were killed. 5 years after the leopard became their ruler, the kingdom was back to the way it was before. All the people who were good before the brain-damaged hyena became the leader, but turned bad when he was leader, became good again. The rains returned, and the sun came back too, and they all lived happily ever after. Vice President Adewale invited Taiwo to the palace after the book was released, and it was the bestseller on the bestsellers list for many months. He wanted to know whom he was referring to in the story, and Taiwo explained that it was just a story about animals. Adewale wondered if perhaps he was calling the country's rulers hyenas and pigs. Taiwo maintained that he wrote a book of fiction. Adewale warned him about the book and his poems, as well as his other activities, especially the editorials which appeared in the nation's conscience on a regular basis about Rahim. Taiwo wondered why a book of fiction about animals was so offensive to the military elite. Adewale's response to him was that he had been warned. When Teju told Taiwo the story of the 2 market women she spoke with in Ibadan, he agreed to join her in her tour of other markets in the region so he could record the stories that these women had to tell. Ayo Teju's second oldest brother had a busy, though not lucrative, private law practice in Lagos at the time. He was not making money from his practice because he spent his time representing people who had been cheated by the government or the big corporations in the country. Most of his clients did not have the money to pay him, and more often than not, many of the judges installed by the military government threw him and his clients out of the courts where he tried to file the lawsuits. These events occurred so often that Ayo Bankole had become a good sport for the cartoonists in the government-owned Daily Times of the Nation, who made fun of him in his cheap polyester suits, being thrown out of one court or the other, and the wig and gown of his profession thrown after him. Most of the time, his siblings and parents had to supplement his income so he could take care of his family. His wife helped out as a secondary school teacher, but his family stood behind him in his chosen career, and his brothers and sister continued to encourage him to keep fighting for the truth for the citizens. In a telephone conversation, Teju told him about the new developments in her life. She wanted him to continue join her in hearing these women, and that he should take on their cases and sue the government on their behalf. Ayo was very interested in assisting his sister, but he was very busy at the time with a case that a judge in a small town of Bada was willing to hear. He had gone to almost all of the federal courts all over the country to file the lawsuit. The result had been the same. He and his case had been thrown out of the courts. A cartoon appeared in the Daily Times of the Nation ridiculing him and suggesting that he took his case to a small village of Bada in the middle of nowhere in the central part of the country, and perhaps the board judge might be willing to hear him. Ayo took the advice, though it was given in jest. He went to this court that was probably forgotten in the small town and filed the motion. The judge, who not only was bored but also was very angry with the government, agreed to hear his case, which concerned a village near Kaduna in the northern region. The dictator military government of the nation, reasoning that even though petroleum was not indigenous to the savanna northern region by the act of God or the migrations of dinosaurs millions of years ago, was not enough reason for the North not to have petroleum. So they decided that some of the oil extracted from the Delta area should be piped hundreds of miles to the northern city of Kaduna to be refined before it could be available to the rest of the country. In that way, the people of the North would have to depend on the northern region. The people of the country would have to depend on the northern region for the petroleum to be used domestically. The fact that it did not make economic sense was not important. The important thing was that the North had to have a hand in petroleum regardless of the technicalities or the logic of it. So the pipes were laid and the refinery in Kaduna was built and oil was refined there. But the pipes were not maintained. Oil started to leak in at some point close to a village of some 300 people, all of whom were burnt to death while they slept. The government of Rahim tried to cover up the story and shamelessly lied to the country that a neighboring village, which the burnt villagers had had a dispute with, had set fire to the residents, killing them. When people in other villages and towns who had relatives in the burnt village heard this, they attacked the innocent village indexed by the government and a war broke out. Rahim sent soldiers to put a stop to the conflict, and in the process of restoring peace, the soldiers ended up killing about 500 people. In all, about 1,000 lives were lost to the lies and insanity. That was 2 years before Ayo and Taiwo with Kende, as an insider in the army, painstakingly investigated the story and discovered the truth. Ayo approached the surviving relatives of these villagers and told them that the government killed their loved ones in the fire by not properly maintaining the petroleum pipes and that they lied against an innocent village. Thirdly, they sent soldiers to kill more people. He suggested that they sued the government. As for the high court judge in the village of Bada, who was willing to hear the case, he had an axe to grind with the federal government. His wages had not been paid in months, and at a time that he refused to hear some case between the government and the foreign company that was taking marble near Bada unless his salary was paid and in full, Adewale threatened him not only with removal from his position as the judge, but with physical harm as well. So at the time, the judge heard the case and punished the marble company for the government as they wanted. He gave Ayo the opportunity to present his case to the court in the presence of several local journalists from the nation's conscience and other privately owned newspapers and international press. So because of this rare opportunity, Ayo could not abandon the case and go with his sister to talk with the market women in the Western region. But he promised her that he would represent any of them who decided to sue the government. And so the stories continued from the women to Teju, the secretary of the Market Women's Association, the group from Iroko and Taiwo. A thing that puzzled the women most was about the beatings. Why do the police and soldiers just beat people on the streets for little or no provocation at all? The several women whom they spoke with and who had witnessed their men being beaten by uniformed men or had been beaten themselves could not comprehend the barbaric act. Many of them told Teju of how their husbands would be dragged out of their cars and beaten up by these men, while their children were often there and watching. More often than not, it is because the men did not move their cars out of the way of someone coming very fast enough. Teju, as perplexed as the women about the beatings, made a mental note that at the next opportunity that she had to speak with a uniformed official of the government, she would ask them the questions. Why do you beat civilians on the streets? What is it all about? The beatings. Why the beatings? Teju, with her brother and the women from Iroko traveling with her, continued to make the rounds of the markets in the Western region to meet and talk with the women. And they continued to hear stories of horrors about what the citizens were doing to one another. After each meeting, Taiwood would mutter to himself, "My father the hyena and my mother the pig." Teju would nod in agreement with her brother. There were stories of the hospitals. Many market women in the different cities told them of their experiences when they go to the hospitals, either for themselves or for their children. They were made to wait for hours, and even in emergency situations. Hospitals are indispensable, they lamented to Teju. We need hospitals as much as we need air and food. A particular story that made Teju weep and brought back her own terrors of the children that she lost was of a market woman in Oshogbo. They had all been in a group sitting together talking with Teju and her brother when the women told her the story. "Mama Ireti," she started, "my life would have been fine were it not for fate or the gods or whoever is in charge of these things, who continued to taunt me with the promises of children. I had the curse of Abiku on me, and I served the term of the curse. I gave birth to 4 babies who I also watched die in infancy, and I buried them. I became severely depressed, and for 1 year I couldn't do a thing. My people took good care of me. I resigned myself to childlessness. Even when my husband took a second wife, I didn't fight with him about it. Do you blame the man? The curse was on my head, not on his. For 5 years, I didn't become pregnant. I got my life back together, and then the teasing started from fate. I just woke up one morning, and I was pregnant. I didn't allow myself to hope. I took each day as it came. I carried the baby to term, had a son, and he started to grow up. I was too afraid to give him a name, so I called him Omomi, and people called him that too. He didn't die in infancy, like the other children. And after he turned 3 years old, I said to myself, this one will stay. And finally, I gave him the name Duro Jaye with the hope that he would stay and enjoy this world. So I started to allow myself to love this child. At the age of 7 years old, he was coming back from school. He was in primary school and a car hit him. The driver was drunk. In broad daylight, afternoon, he ran into this group of school children, and my son was one of them. It was close to the market, so people saw and called to me, and I ran there and carried my son to the hospital. I was wailing and begging God and begging the nurses and doctors to help me and save my son. One of the nurses in the hospital casualty said to me, "Stop screaming, woman. Don't you know that there is no emergency in casualty? Everybody will be attended to in time. Just wait your turn." I begged them to please help my son. My son was bleeding from his head, and he was calling out to me. He was saying to me, "Mami, majenku. Mami, majenku," begging me not to let him die. The other people there who came for headache or diarrhea said that I could take their turn so that the nurses and doctors could see my child first. And still, this nurse insisted that I wait my turn. My son didn't die then. God wanted my son to live, but Rahim and that Okubo Adewale didn't. Some of the people who had been waiting for hours actually left so I could take their turn. The doctors saw my son and started to treat him. They said the car hit some part of his brain, and they took him to the operating room to operate on him. They gave me a list of all the things that I had to buy before the operation. I ran back to the market, got money, and went to the pharmacy and bought all the things. Mama Iriti, the woman, took a deep breath and started to count on her fingers. I bought cotton wool, scissors in different sizes and shapes, needles that they use to sew human beings, and not the kind for clothes or shoes. It is different. I bought iodine and rubbing alcohol, gloves that the surgeon would wear, face mask for him to cover his face, the scarf for his head, and the kind of clothes that they wear over their feet while they are in the operating theater. Then I bought the medication for the doctor that would put my son to sleep. I bought a cylinder of oxygen and one other gas that they called nitrous oxide. It would help him to sleep so he doesn't feel the pain. Plaster, intravenous fluids, 10 different kinds of medications, bedpan, bed sheets, and 3 kegs of water, and on went the list. I spent $1,000 that afternoon alone. All my sisters in the market put money together for all these things. Then I had to pay the doctor $500, even though he was a government employee on salary by the government before he started the operation. I had to pay the nurses too so that they would take good care of my son. Well, Mama Ireti, to cut a long story short, my son was in the hospital for 2 months. He remained unconscious after the brain operation. Then he started to have convulsions and fever. So they took him back to the operating room to open his brain again. They told me that he had developed an abscess that they needed to drain. One of the nurses told me that I should go buy gasoline for the generator so that when they started to operate on my son, that wouldn't be the time that the electric company would decide to take electricity away. So I bought the gasoline for the theater generator and they started the operation. About 20 minutes after they started, one of the nurses came to me to tell me that I should go and buy or borrow a generator because the one that the operating theater was using had to be moved to another part of the hospital for use in the big doctor's offices. It was too hot in their offices and they needed to put on the air conditioner. I stood there with my mouth wide open and said to myself, my son is cut open on the operating table, but because the big doctors don't want to sweat, I have to go and buy a generator after I bought the gasoline for the generator. So I attacked the nurse and I started to beat her. I bit into her arm. I wanted to eat her up. Mama Ireti, I went crazy that day. It was just too much for me to take. All the time my son was in the hospital, every day it was go buy this and go buy that. Every day I was paying hospital bill. Now I had to borrow or buy a generator. So they called the hospital security on me and they threw me out of the hospital. But my son was there. So I pulled myself together, went home and called some of my people to please come back to the hospital with me. They let my people into the hospital, but the security would not let me in. I begged and offered them money, but they wouldn't let me in. I needed to hear about my son's condition, whether he was dead or alive. Finally, one of the security men said he would let me in if I gave him all the money that I had on me, and only if I sleep with him. We could go to a dark place behind the hospital and have sex, and he would let me see my son, he told me. What did I do? The woman opened up her hands, palms upward in resignation, while looking at the people she was talking to. I am a mother who had buried 4 children and didn't want to bury another child, so I agreed. I gave him all the money I had on me. I gave him my earrings and gold chain. I gave him my gele because he said that it would look good on his wife. I followed him to the back of the hospital, closed my eyes, and he raped me. He led me into the hospital after that, and I saw my son. They finished the surgery that day in the dark with lanterns and candles, and the doctor told me that he hoped that he drained the entire abscess. I begged the nurse that I attacked and bit. I gave her $50 as apology so that she would not take revenge on my sick child. Mama Ireti, a penny worth of book is full of words resounding beyond words. The woman grunted in despair and clapped her hands 3 times in hopelessness. Very soon my husband told me that he couldn't continue to spend all the money that we didn't have on this one child who had not spoken a word in 2 months. So we asked them to discharge him, and we took him to the traditional healers. My son died 3 months after his accident. The last words my son spoke to me were, Mamami, Mami, Majenku. And I couldn't save my son. This country killed my son. And the driver who hit my son with his car, he is a big man in Lagos. The police let him go because, as they later told my husband, he had the time to go to the police station. They couldn't prove that he drove the car. Doesn't that make a comedy out of a tragedy? Teju and Taiwo were in tears at this point. The other women in the room echoed together. My father the hyena and my mother the pig. The women continued their stories of horrors about hospitals, telling Teju that they prefer to take their loved ones to traditional healers rather than go through with what Mama Duro Jaye just described about her child, which was a typical experience. We lose children all the time, Mama Ireti, one of them told Teju. They die of this illness or that illness, and the hospitals will not help us. The government will ask us to take our children for immunization. We do, and they don't work. The children still have measles and polio and whooping cough. They tell us use clean water, yet there's no water from the pipes, and we pay taxes all the time. Then, that empty-headed idiot, the First Lady, a beautiful child born into an honorable Yoruba family, who went and married that ugly mullah, Rahim, will come on the radio and television and tell us to practice family planning and not to have too many children. When you have 6 children, you pray that 2 will survive into adulthood. So if we start having 3 or 4 children, as she has been advising us to do, which child would survive? She wants us to be childless. That is what she wants. One woman told them that everybody in this country takes power, Mama Ireti. You just have to find a way to get power. As for the doctors and nurses, we understand their place in the scheme of things in the hospital. The ones that we don't understand are the security guards. The government tells us all the time, take your sick children to the hospitals. They are there to serve you. Healthcare is free and is your right. What Mama Duro Jaye just told you about that security guard, that happens all the time. They will not let you through their gates. They will say, sleep with me first. My child is convulsing and you want me to sleep with you first? A demon has come to inhabit amongst us all. It is pure evil. We have become monsters, I tell you. What about armed robbers on the roads, Mama Iriti, brother journalist? What about these ones? Before we leave our homes on journeys, we have to make sacrifices to the gods to protect us from them. In the past, it used to be that if you traveled on the roads at night, you would be begging for trouble, and if they attacked you, then you have yourself to blame. But not so anymore. In broad daylight, they attack. They have guns. We don't have guns. They take everything from us, and then they kill us, which is the part that I don't understand. You have the power. Don't you? We don't. You have taken everything from us. We have not fought back. Why kill us? At least if you spared our lives, we will go back home and be parents to our children. But oh no, they will kill. This is an evil that defies all understanding. One woman told them in Ogbomoso, they kill because if they killed the people they robbed, their families would be too distraught to make a case for finding the car and the properties that they stole from them, or reporting to the police and things like that, another woman put in. Then, this latest craziness of hired assassins in the big cities, it has happened only once here in Ogbomoso, thank God. And we were told that they followed the man from Lagos. They say that such things happen all the time in Lagos. They'll just drive up to the person and fire their guns at them and drive away. They said that it is a deal that has gone all wrong. We all live in fear. What is this Gambari Rahim and Omo Ali Adewale doing to us? Nothing at all. Doing for us. Nothing at all. They spend their time holding on to power. They are just like the armed robbers too. They steal our money and they don't protect us at all, was another woman's contribution. Protection. That is what we want from our government. We need them to protect us. Please write all these things down, brother journalist. And you too, Mama Ireti, be our voice and tell the government all these things that we are telling you. The women pleaded with Teju and her brother. In the city of Oyo, the stories continued from the market women who continued to welcome Teju and her party with open arms. Here, we are more worried about motor vehicle accidents. The motor vehicles continue to kill people in droves, especially the huge trucks and trailers which traveled through Oyo from Lagos to the northern part of the country. They wondered if the god of iron, Ogunonire, was mad at them and was punishing them. But he has been a good and fair God, they opined, defender of widows, orphans, and the underdog, pathfinder, helper of mankind. Why would he demand so much human sacrifice? The roads are bloodthirsty, they lamented, thirsty for human blood. They wanted to know how the government could help them with that. Teju told the women that it was not the god Ogun Onire who was mad at everybody, but that the roads are bad. The drivers speed too much. They don't obey the laws of the roads. And most of the times, the conditions of the roads, the vehicles are not good at all. Many trucks and trailers should not be on the road, Taiwo insisted. That is why they come apart and crash into cars, killing innocent people. I will add it to the list. There has to be ways of monitoring these trailers. Some laws have to be put in place and they have to be enforced, Teju assured the women. The women told her in detail about the horrible accidents that they had been involved in and that God had saved their lives and that the hospitals were not equipped well enough to be of any help. People just die or are maimed for life. Some of the women started to cry at the memories of what they were telling Teju. Taiwo sympathized with them. He told them that the country had the worst and the highest rate of motor vehicle accidents in the world. The women were quiet for a long time after he gave them this piece of information. Then our government has to do something about it, one woman maintained. We have to to do a lot too, each and every one of us. We have to control the drivers when they drive us to the farms or to the big cities to buy things to sell. I decided a long time ago, after I had this experience with this Omoita driver, that I will look into the eyes of the driver before I get into their vehicle. And if they speed, I will complain and make them slow down. I think that we should all do that. She continued, it was 1 year ago. I went to the motor park to go to Lagos to buy the clothes that I sell. I go to Lagos once a month. So there we were all seated in the bus when finally the driver came. He was not the one who loaded us onto the bus. Someone else did this for him. I had assumed that it was the person calling the passengers into the bus who would drive it. Anyway, he came and we started off. The way he sped out of the motor park, you would have thought that the devil was after him and there were a lot of people around. They were all running to get out of his way. Mothers were snatching their children to themselves for fear that he would lose control and careen into them. We all said to him, slow down, what is the rush? He didn't answer us, so we continued and he was speeding so much. He said that if he slowed down, the flies would bite the tires. The woman shook her head and clapped her hands 3 times in dismay. So he continued. We were all terrified. One old man who was going to visit his children in Ibadan started to cry. Another person said that he wanted to urinate and that he should stop the bus. The driver looked back at us, taking his eyes off the road. He continued to speed and said to us, you are all afraid? You haven't seen anything yet. Ha! Mama Iriti, I started to pray. My children are still very young. Every day, I pray to God to spare my life so I can accompany each of them to that stage in their lives when they will not be afraid anymore. Because, as we know, a motherless child must not incur a wound on his back. She lamented and started to cry at the memory of her ordeal. The man continued to fly down the road, which with us in the bus, and everybody was either praying aloud, calling to his or her God, or crying. And the worst part of it was that from time to time, he would take his eyes off the road, turn around, look at us, and say to us, are you afraid? You haven't seen anything yet. That was how we continued until we got to Ibadan. He flew through the city with so many people around, blaring his horn, and people were running out of his way and cursing at him, and yet he continued. He didn't even stop for the passengers going to Ibadan to get off. Finally, we got to the toll gate on the outskirts of Ibadan. He slowed down and stopped. Thank God that there were a lot of cars there in line to pay the toll. So the moment he stopped, we all ran out of the bus. I didn't have any luggage, but the people who had luggage left them behind. I tell you, I couldn't travel for 3 months after that. I came back home. I couldn't continue on the journey to Lagos. The following day, I was in the market when some woman started to talk about the driver. He had an accident. He died. But he used his cursed head to kill some people in another car that he hit shortly after he took off from the toll gate. After we all ran out of the bus, he would have killed all of us. Oh. Now before I go into every public transport, I ask to see the driver and I smell him. The other driver was an Amugbo. I smell them now to check if they've been smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol. We all should do that, she concluded her story. In Ilesha, the women focused on the problems of water and electricity. They needed pipe-borne water, they told Teju and her brother. We paid taxes all the time, and yet they wouldn't give us pipe-borne water and electricity. Now everybody has to buy generators to generate electricity and dig boreholes so you can get water. What is the government doing? Many people have died when the generators exploded or when the petrol that you buy and keep in your home for use in the generators catches fire. This is not fair on us. Please tell Rahim and Adewale for us. We continue to have all these diseases. Then the government would send people to tell us that we should drink clean water, like the ones which come out of the pipes. Which pipes? Cholera comes and kills us. Diarrhea kills our children all the time. Guinea worm is here. Typhoid fever and on and on. They are all here. We know that we need clean water, but how do we get clean water? And then everything is so expensive, one woman stated. The food is so expensive. I sell food in the market every day, but in my house, we cannot afford to eat 3 times a day. My children, even the baby who is 3 years old, we all eat 101. That is breakfast, no lunch, and then we eat supper. For the past week, my husband and I have been eating 001, only 1 meal a day. We can't feed our children, Mama Ireti. We cannot. The other day, I wept. I was opening my shop in the market for business when this woman passed in front of me with her 3 children. She was taking them to school. They were young too, maybe 6 years old, 8 years old, and the oldest couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The children were crying because they were hungry. They told their mother that they were hungry, and she continued to beat them. Now, why would you hit your child who told you that he was hungry in the morning when he hadn't eaten breakfast? She's not a bad mother. She hit them because she was angry with herself that she couldn't feed her children. She did not want them reminding her that she's a bad mother. This is the hopelessness of our lot. Oh, Mama Ireti, please help us tell Rahim and Adewale. In Shaki, Teju had the opportunity to speak with the local government chairman because his wife was the president of the Market Women's Association. Both husband and wife insisted that Teju and her party had lunch with them. So after the lunch, Teju asked him about the things that the women told her earlier on in the day when she met with them in the market. The women in Shaki, like the women in the other towns in the region, had the same complaints about the government. Teju wanted him to tell her because as far as she was concerned, the people were the government and governing had been brought down to the grassroots, close at hand to the people in the form of local government. Rahim and Adewale were too far away from the people for them to feel that they were for them. But the local government was there with them in the towns and villages, and the officials were their neighbors and loved ones. The chairman had a lot to tell her too. He started, the federal government will give allowance in Lagos that so much money has been voted for the local governments. Will announce in Lagos that so much money has been given for the local governments. They do this as if they're doing us a huge favor, when this is our entitlement. So the announcement will be on television and the radio, and there will be no money. It will go down to Ibadan. I would go down to Ibadan to inquire about the said money, and I would be told, what money? The federal government was just lying. They do that when the criticism gets too much and they try to appease the people. So you see, they have turned us into beggars in our own country. Beggars who have been depending on the benevolence of the rulers. For months, we wouldn't have money to pay staff and take care of the roads, clinics, courts, and town halls. Then the people who have heard on television and radio that there was money for us will say that the money came and I embezzled it. What money? No money came. I know that other chairmen do embezzle the money. Many of them whom I met at meetings tell me that this is our chance to get some for us too. I know that for some of them, once the money finally comes, they take care of themselves first by stealing some of the money. There is even the chairman of a neighboring local government who told me that he has so much money now that he doesn't know what to do with it. This is money meant for his local government to take care of his people's needs, the people who voted him into office. He continued, but as God is my witness, I have never stolen a penny of the money that comes to this local government. I can account for every penny of it. A lot of the officials want us to steal money. They come to us with one big plan or the other, or one white elephant or of a project or the other, but I don't go for it. My life has been threatened many times, and I know that come next election, I will not be voted in. He paused and looked subdued, continued in a mournful voice. We don't understand that we are the government. We don't understand that if we do all these non-existent projects, the purposes of which is to steal money, we suffer. Our hospitals don't have equipment. The roads are bad. We don't have pipe-borne water. There are no schools for our children. We cannot pay teachers, and so on and so forth. We don't understand any of these things. To us, the government is an alien one, like when we were occupied by the British, and stealing the money that comes from the government is like we are getting even with them. It is actually an alien government that we have in a way, with the likes of Rahim there. He is Hausa and he cannot empathize with the Yoruba people. Heck, the man can't empathize with his own fellow Hausa. They have the same complaints too at the meetings that I have attended. What we need, Mama Iriti and Mr. Bankole, what we need is education for the people. Even we need to change the Yoruba word for government from Ijoba to something else. Ijoba connotes seat of the king, like the King of England, an alien occupying power. We need to change it to something like Ijokowa, our seat of governance. Yeah, I like that. I think that will start to help us see that we are the government, so he concluded. Both Taiwo and Teju agreed with him. In the villages where they briefly stopped on their way to the larger cities, the people complained about the poverty. The villagers in particular did not care for electricity or pipe-borne water. What they wanted was health care facilities. They also wanted schools for their children so that they could have a good future. We are the forgotten ones, they lamented to Teju. The government has forgotten us, yet we are citizens of this country as well. We are the ones who grow all the food eaten in this country. We appeal to the government to help us with fertilizers, but they do not. The doctors and nurses in the hospitals had their own tales to tell as well, confirming the issues raised by the many women. The government has enough wealth to take care of the health needs of her citizens, were the healthcare workers' opinion. They told Teju that the equipment and materials needed in the hospitals were not available. Even basics like gauze, disinfectants, and water, which are indispensable, are not in the hospitals. The same explanation was offered when doctors demand of their administrators why they were not available. The money to buy them never came from the federal or regional governments. They feel impotent when they have been well trained to take care of people and they have to stand by and watch helplessly as people die, when they have the knowledge to care for them, but what was missing were the materials, yet these were affordable things. They complained too about the non-payment of their wages and how they were unable to feed their families or clothe their children. Some of Akin's colleagues that Teju and Taiwo spoke with told them that they were thinking of following in the footsteps of some of their peers who had left the country for greener pastures. Many of these doctors who were trained in England and the United States had been emigrating back to these countries for better jobs or to the Arab world where they were paid on a regular basis and the materials and equipment to do their jobs were available. As such, they felt fulfilled enough that they were doing the jobs that they were trained to do and properly too. Akin told his sister and brother that he could not blame some of his colleagues who were doing this. He said that when you go to school for so many years to train to be a doctor, the least you deserve is to be able to do your job well and know that you can feed your family. A lot of my colleagues have difficulty doing this. It is not as if this is a poor country, he continued. If that were the case, then everybody would understand, and that would be the standard. But the infuriating thing is that some people just steal the money meant for a whole population. It is murder as far as I am concerned. As an example, if a child belongs to a country and the child is ill and his parents try their best to get him to a doctor, but they are not able to consult with the doctor since the doctor is not in the hospital because his wages have not been paid in months. So the doctor, who has family to care for, needed to make money. So he or she has gone to look for money elsewhere. The doctor is not unable to do anything. The doctor is there, but not able to do anything for the sick child, because even though he has the knowledge, knows what the problem is and what needs to be done to make the child well, but he does not have the necessary equipment and materials to treat the child. So what does he do? He gives the parents a list of things to buy, but the parents are not able to buy these things because they do not have the money. And if not because the parents, and it is not because the parents are lazy and don't want to work. No, not at all. They actually have their jobs that they go to every day, but don't have the money because they haven't been paid in 6 or 7 months. So the child is not treated. The child dies, or at best becomes deformed in one way or the other. Then you sit back and ask yourself how this could have happened in a country rich in oil, in a country where over 2 million barrels of oil is extracted every day, a country where diamond, tin, and zinc are mined every day. But this happens because of our leaders. They make this country's money their personal money, and they set in motion this course of events. How is that different from an armed robber on the highway who steals money from defenseless travelers or goes into people's homes with a gun and steals from them, kills them, and if they don't cooperate with him, or just kills them for the fun of it? It isn't any different. The officials who stole the money for the hospitals and the doctors' wages killed that child in my example. This is a story that we see in the hospitals every day. Every blessed day, it is the same story in hundreds of variety. Rahim and Adewale are armed robbers and mass murderers. The governor of this region and all the other regions are mass murderers. They murder people every day in this country with armed robbery. They steal with their pens in their offices, and whoever complains is thrown into prison or assassinated. How is that different from the armed robber with a gun? In those two ways, they kill every day. And yet, armed robbery is a crime punishable by death in this country. I can explain to his sister and brother when they visited him in the hospital. Here ends chapter 8b. It's still not complete. This is a really long chapter, but it's a good one. It's a hard to hear one, but it's very well written. So we're going to end on page 216. I want to thank you for tuning in. And if you would like to purchase a copy of this book, you can email the author, kendeayeni26 at gmail.com to order your copy. Again, kendeayeni26 at gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. You can like my channel and you can subscribe. And also, please share this with others if you so choose to. Bye, and catch you for Chapter 8C.